Right then, this is pretty much episode 1 of the front door frame. I've been releasing some videos on the canopy that surround this this front door, but the front door is the special bit of this. Not that the canopy wasn't particularly special, but here's a little SketchUp drawing of the front door we're going to be making and a bit of a tour around it. I've just jumped on the computer. I've got a really accurate drawing of this one, how all these joints interact. You can sort of go into it, grab each component as a sort of a piece and see how the joints in every position actually interact with each other and what cuts I've got to make in the actual timber itself. So it's pretty complicated frame. This is probably as complicated as a door frame is going to get in standard timber. I've got huge section sizes, unusual mouldings, and an opening in door with externally glazed glass. So there's lots going on here with panels and stuff, and I've spent an awful lot of time with the client on a design here. Stuff like a little window ledge here, so that when you're exiting the house you can pop your keys or a cup of coffee on that little ledge and work the door and get yourself sorted before you leave home. So a lot of thought and planning's gone into this one, and I'm going to film the process of working it through. So I've got my timber in the workshop. I've just got to take a proper cutting list from this of finished sizes that I require and lengths, widths and thicknesses of all these timbers. So I'll do that now, and then we'll get back out into the workshop and make a start planing that up. To hopefully do the whole of this project in a blog style, and this is day 1. So I've took the measurements from the drawing for all the timber section sizes I need. The timber's been in my store for a long time. It's time to grab that out and cut it up and then start planing it today down to those sizes that I need. To keep the smooth flow of a project like this, you would order the glass at the start of the project, so that drawing needs to be pretty accurate. The glass size is dependent on the sizes of the timber, because they're middle pieces of timber. If they don't hold up to the full thickness, it's not really going to matter in the frame, but it will affect the glass size. So I'm going to plane the timber up, make sure that that timber holds up to the final size, and then once I know that, I can order the glass and get things moving. I get a few questions about why my workbench isn't completely flat. It's so that when you put a big board down like this, there's somewhere for your fingers to go, and just have like a piece of movable board the same thickness of the piece that's in front of the saw, and you can slide that along the bench and it support the end of a long length of timber when you're cross-cutting it or doing whatever you want to it. With the ends cut, just got to tessellate the pieces of timber to suit the cutting list. Normally I'd stick that into like cut list optimizer with the lengths of your bits of wood, but this is really easy. They just all work out dead nice with the size of the frame versus the length of the timber. I'll never get bored of using this saw cutting through thick timber. It's just a beautiful thing. Right, we are ready for planing up. It's important on a job like this where we're doing bespoke mouldings, stuff you've not done before, get plenty of sample pieces out. So I've got a couple of extra blocks here. They'll become pattern pieces for like mortising and cutting the shoulders and stuff on the ends of the timber. And we're on to planing, so a little bit of planing info for you, sharpen your knowledge on that. So as you're looking at a piece of wood to plane it, you want to look down the edges like this from one end to the other. I'll find one that's maybe a bit bent so it's an easy example. So like this piece of wood here, we can see there's a slight curve in that piece of wood in this manner here, yeah? So a C-shaped curve. You want to put these sections, so the ends that hit, if you put it on a flat surface, you want to put the tips of the C with the arc high in the middle, so it's like a bridge. And that's how you want to plane it, so you plane the tips off first. If you do it the other way up, the reason you tend not to, you can do it the other way up if you're very, very careful and know what you're doing, but these machines have a slight bit of like tolerance on the back bed compared to your cutter. So the height that your cutter cuts at, because it's a circular motion, you get like a ripple effect. If you look at a piece of planed wood, you quite often get this sort of ripple effect, the top side there being a piece of wood. And the faster you push it through, the taller these ripples get, and it affects the height of that this bed needs to be to get a truly perfectly straight piece of wood, because you're obviously pushing something through at this level, trimming a little bit off it, and it's got a reference off this bed to make it nice and straight. So there's a little bit of tolerance in this bed to what it actually cuts at height wise. So if you plane it in with the curve and the C shape uphill like this, the first bit you plane through can obviously drop down, and then you sort of you don't eliminate the curve from the piece of wood. Whereas if you plane it through with the C in this orientation, you take the tips off and you take the tips off, and you basically want to plane it down until you've got a tiny little C left, and then your last pass through will give you a straight piece of wood. It's generally on a well set up planer, you can do it in one, maybe two passes. Very rarely I'll push a piece of wood over the planer just once, unless I'm absolutely confident it was straight. The other thing to note with planing up is you've got to look for a bit of twist or wind in the timber. You can do that. I tend to do that. A quick glance down it on the face of the wood, so this face with your C shape like this. So that'll be the face we're planing first, and I can cast my eye on this edge down to the same edge down there and see whether this one is like that and the far end is like that. If it is, you've got a bit of a twist, and you need to manipulate your hold of your timber to make sure that you're countering that. What you don't want to do is put a load of, if this piece of timber is twisted, is to put loads of pressure on the front or the entry piece of it, so that sits down flat to the bed, and then as it planes through, you end up with basically the corner being taken off here and nothing here, because then it's going to take it off unevenly. You're going to end up with more material lost off that end than this end to get it all nice and square and smooth. So you sort of want to balance the first cut through, take an even amount off the opposite corners if you can do. Once you've got that first flat face, we can have a look again. You want to look for your C-shaped curve and then reference off the fence. And this fence should be set nice and square, and you hold the face that you've just planed to the fence with your C-shaped curve downhill, and take the tips off again until you've got that nice straight piece, and that should give you then a straight face and a straight edge that are nice and square to each other, which is you ready then to push them through the planer. Cannot stress enough, especially on stuff this size, how important it is to get your timber square. Check it, just triple check it. Engineer square is what you need, not a woodworking square. You want an engineer square, and check it again, and then before you thickness it, check it again, because it will just make your life hell, especially if you're hand scribing stuff and they're like 150mm pieces of timber. It can lead to be 2-3 mils out, and at a piece of like the joint there, you've got one coming in from each side. If that piece in the middle is out of square and you set these joints up based on a square piece of timber, or even worse, you've set it up based on an out of square piece of timber, one side of that joint is going to be very much out and have, big gaps in it, and going to cause you a right headache as to why nothing fits together, and then the top of the frame won't fit on because this bit's too long, and it becomes a real headache. So you've got to be accurate with your squareness and accurate with every joint at every step of the way. So what did you learn in school today? Check it square. This is really good, actually. You might laugh and think there's no way that is good enough, but I find this more accurate than my engineer's square. It tells you to the 0.1 of a mil if you're out, whereas an engineer's square, you have to kind of like get down and get some light behind it to see whether there's a gap when you're getting that accurate. It's quite difficult with timber to see if there's a gap, whereas this just measures it and tells you if there's a gap to the 0.1 of a degree. And if that's saying 90 and you've zeroed it when they're together, it's bloody accurate. It's really good. They're only about 10 quid. Cannot recommend that enough. Trend sponsored the channel, and I've had this one. I bought this one myself probably 15 years ago, and it's still going strong. and is a godsend of a bit of a kit. This is a 200mm. I think they do all different sizes now, but if you've not got one, get one, and stay tuned on the channel, because I'm going to do like a bit of a Christmas list of tools that you can send to a loved one, or might inspire you for something you might want to ask for Christmas. Just thought that might be a good one for the Christmas list, because I use it on everything. But maybe it'll be a funny Christmas present, because buying someone lube for Christmas to use in their shed might be deemed a bit weird. But it's good gear. What the hell is that? Look at that one there. It's like a something's been through here and dinked the bed up and caused a raise in the cast bed. Oh my god, that's something heavy. Hadn't noticed that. Bloody hell. Yeah, bed up a bit so I can file that back down actually. Don't worry about the scratches. Got over it already. So it's worth sticking a tape on these as you're pushing them through the planer, just to check the thickness, that you're not going below your finished thickness of your timber. Like I say, this job, it's critical that I get a certain finished thickness to suit the glass. Some of these pieces got very close to that at one end as I was surface planing them. So what I tend to do in that situation is check the other end. Generally there's more meat left on one end than the other, and just try and plane it straight by planing it from just one end. So sit the end of the board past the cutter and then plane it off to the end that is thicker. Get the board straight, and then just one final pass to do a perfectly straight, sort of smooth finish pass, and that gets you a straight board. I'll show you, not with the board through the actual machine, but as I'm pushing a bit of wood through the planer, like a long board, once it's around halfway through, it should have gone on and stayed on in relation to this bed and sit flat on this bed. Then as you're at this side of the machine pushing it through, you can just check against the bed to see if there's any gap on the bed this side as you're pushing it through. And if that board is slightly raised up like this, you know that it's got a bit of wind in it in that orientation. So what you don't want to do is then, when you're pushing this through, is put all your pressure and your weight forward to get the board through on the side that's high. You want to aim on this corner and give the downwards and forwards pressure from here, so it allows that board, with whatever gap it's got there, to push through and remain at the same consistent gap as it goes through the planer. And that should then plane it off flat. If you put your weight on this corner, it'll become a point where it fulcrums over the cutter. The board will then go from having the gap there to being tight on this bed, and it will plane that through, and you'll keep the twist that the board originally had in it within the boards, which is not what you want. It's exactly what you don't want to do. And then one final tip, and I promise I'll shut up. When you're squaring your timber up and you're pushing through, you're obviously stood at sort of 45 degrees. Your arms are pushing on the wood at 45 degrees. So it's really, really easy to square a piece of wood up if it sits like this naturally on the planer, to push that over to the fence. But if the wood sits with a bit of a gap naturally at the bottom against the fence like that, then you have to put an awful lot more pressure with your fingers to get that to sit tightly against the fence at the bottom here. So I'm always careful and always watching for that, because you'll find that most of your timber when you're planing up will be slightly out of square with a gap like that at the bottom, because you have to put an awful lot more pressure to get that gap, to get rid of that, than you do if the gap was at the top. So always aim with a bit more of a preference to putting more pressure against the bottom of the fence. So I'm trying to aim my pressure here, and then you tend to end up this side of the fence sorts itself out no matter what, and then you need plenty of pressure at this point on your timber to get it nice and square. Let me know what you think about a bit more in-depth look at the machining process and the sort of the real detail, nitty-gritty of it, whether you watch my videos just to see the projects and watch a bit of a casual 10-minute video, or whether you're actually interested in learning this stuff. Be interested in the comments to see what works and what doesn't. Because obviously, to really go into detail, it's going to take you 10 years of constantly learning to learn all of this stuff, and you never stop learning. So there's going to be plenty of detail to put in a video. Right, they're all surface planed, straight on two edges and square to each other. So these bits of timber are to finish 155. I ripped them down at 165. So I know my planer can take 5mm off as a maximum cut, so some of them will be at 165 pretty much, because they only just held up. So if I set it to 160, I know that they'll all go through and should be golden. Anywhere that doesn't hold up to size for the next pass across the planer, when it's getting near to like where you might flip it over and finish the other side, obviously that one's really obvious, but I put a squiggle down it, because you can't always see. Like there, you might glance over this board and think it looks great, but you'll definitely see the squiggle lines if you put them on them as you hear them coming off the planer where it misses and it's not doing any cutting. You can just make a little pencil mark on it, and then you can see it really quickly. Okay, that's all the planing done. There are a few that haven't quite held up, but I am 0.5 millimetre away from my finished size, because I'm going to push them through the wide belt sander, which is kind of my new secret weapon for joinery. because I've not got a spiral planer block, especially in Sapigli, you get like quite a coarse grain ripple. It looks quite bad on the camera there, but that's not uncommon for a finish off the planer because it's got such a varied grain direction. So you get this really horrible planed effect. And if you push that piece of wood through the planer in the opposite direction, this bit here that's smooth would fur up, similar to that. So I sand 0.5 mil off to the final finish, and you tend to get really nice flat surfaces then ready for paint. And I do it at the start of the job when all the timber is nice and square, and just push them straight through the wide belt. A little bit more time, but I think it actually saves you time compared to sanding them by hand with a belt sander to get rid of all of them imperfections. You can see the different direction in the grain from like the shadowing from the sanding direction showing up, but it's a lot better than that planer ripping it to bits. So that's all prepared now, ready to start making the frame, and it's perfect preparation as well. Dead straight, dead square, beautiful surface finish for the most part. There is the odd bit with still a planer ripple in it. Hope you enjoyed this one, probably quite a long one. Let me know what you think, and I'll carry on with this series, and we should make a beautiful front door by the end of it. I've also been sent this beast. I've got to make a video on it. So any video ideas will be much appreciated. Look at it. It's an absolute monster. I don't know if you'd call it a fat bike, but this tyre, it is a beast. When you see it in real life, the videos do not do it justice. Absolute beast, and it's powerful too. Really, really powerful.